everybody. I'm the teacher, and my name is Mr. Clow. It's pronounced like cloud, but then you drop the D, so it's pronounced Mr. Clow. And I'll be the teacher for this Intro to Algebra 2 course. As I'm sure you're all aware by now, the school has moved towards, at least for this first quarter, towards a blended type of instruction where half of your time is going to be virtual and half is going to be in person. And for some of you, you might actually be spending all of your time virtually. Because of that, we're expected to record some of these videos so you can watch it at your leisure, essentially. So this is going to be the first video where I'm just going to kind of break down some of the expectations for this class. So as you should know, this is a skill building course. This is Intro to Algebra 2. So the whole idea is that we're going to pretty much build a bridge between what you learned in Algebra 1 and what you will end up learning in Algebra 2, and just sort of kind of building up the skills that will end up helping you in that later class. But not only that, this class is also going to try to help you build up your skills for some of the other math classes, for example, stats. And then also, in general, just real world knowledge. Math is very useful. So, the goal is to kind of build up a lot of this math skill. Some of the things that we're going to talk about are things like polynomials, exponentials, and logarithms. So if you look at the title, it's Intro to Algebra 2 and Trigonometry. We're not really going to focus on the trigonometry part. We're mainly going to focus on the algebra part. Some of the required materials, you're going to need either a pen or a pencil. Now, I do recommend getting a pencil with an eraser. Because this is a math course, one of the things that is really beneficial is writing out problems and making mistakes. That's how you learn, is by making mistakes. So a pencil is really nice because you can always erase your mistakes. Then you should also have a spiral notebook and a folder, or a binder and some loose leaf. Basically, you need something to write stuff down in for things like to do now, but also in order to get worksheets. So you want something that can hold worksheets as well. One of the biggest lies that everyone always ends up telling themselves is that they don't need to write things down, that they could just remember it by watching it. That's not how this works. Math is a skill based class, it is an ability based class. It is something that you have to be actively participating in. For example, just like with sports, if you watch someone training to be a football player, to be a baseball player, or a soccer player, whatever, you can't just watch them do that and immediately go, okay, now I understand it, I can do it. It's something that you have to practice and physically train. The same thing applies with math. You essentially have to do as many practice problems and basically train your brain into understanding it. The grading policy. So the grading policy is new, but it's going to be following what all the other math departments are doing. There are two categories. There's going to be an assessments category and a class participation category. Both of them are going to be worth 50% of your overall grade. Now, just a kind of a brief description of these two, assessments is going to be pretty much what you're graded on based off of whether you're right or wrong. And then class participation are things that you've been doing throughout the day, and it's more kind of based off of your effort and whether you're completing your work rather than whether that work is correct. Now, to go into a little bit more detail, so there's two main categories within the assessment section. This is essentially just quizzes and quarterlies. So quizzes are going to be short assessments, short as the name implies, quizzes held pretty much at the end of each unit, though I might throw one in the middle of it. And it's just going to cover a small piece of the material. And it's going to have a combination of some multiple choice and some free response questions. As far as how this might play in the virtual aspect, we're still figuring that out. So when we get closer to it, I'll let you know more details. The quarterly exam, there's only going to be one every quarter at the end, and it's going to cover everything that you've learned up until that point. Essentially, they're just going to be end up being longer quizzes. So quizzes will end up being half a period to a period long, while the quarterly will end up being one, maybe even two periods long. Class participation, on the other hand, is based off of five categories. So the first category is classwork and homework. So these are pretty much all the worksheets, all the problems, all the do nows, all the videos, everything that you're essentially assigned to work on in order to do practice. And the nice thing about this is that it's all graded based off of completion. So, did you do the classwork? Did you do the homeworks? If so, you get 100. Even if you end up getting a 20 on, let's say, an ed puzzle video, or a 10 on the worksheets because you were struggling and you weren't really understanding it, you still at least get the full points because you completed it. The second category is discussions. So discussions are things like asking questions in class, answering questions when I ask them to you, instead of responding, "Oh, I don't know." Um, just essentially being involved in the conversation, instead of just sitting there staring at me. Uh, the idea is that if I hear your voice, then you end up getting points. And that's what I'm looking for, is I'm looking for input from you in that category. Contact. So context is referring to two parts. One, responding to messages through Remind. I have the code for the Remind group. If you didn't know, this is going to be the main way that we're going to be able to interact with each other and communicate, where you can ask me questions and I can um, reach out to you or even post announcements for the class. Um, so the contact category is how well you are reaching out to me when you need help and how well you're able to respond to when I reach out to you for some thing. So, for example, if I reach out to you and I say, "Hey, one of the worksheets that you did is incomplete. Fix it up and hand it to me tomorrow," and you don't respond at all to me, that's no contact. That's bad. Um, Now, I do want to point out the one thing of asking me questions. So, right here, um, obviously, if you're doing really well in the class and you're acing everything, I don't expect you to be asking me questions. So that's why we say when needed. So I'm only looking for you asking me questions if you are struggling in the class, if you're having trouble completing assignments, if you are getting 20s on pretty much every video or something, and you're not asking me questions, again, that's bad contact. So you end up losing points in that category. Behavior. This one's easy, and it's the one that you would normally think of as far as class participation. It's how well you treat your classmates and me. So if you're being nice to people, uh, being nice to me, you're not distracting the fellow students by talking about, what's going on after school or whatever, and you're following directions that I send out to you, then you get 100. Easy peasy, that's it. And then the last category is effort and activity. So this is just essentially the effort that you're putting into. This is including things like coming to class on time, coming to class prepared, and not constantly asking me for pencils and papers and things like that. Making sure that you're either asking me for help or asking others when we're doing like little side practice questions, but also making corrections on any mistakes you make. A lot of times, what I've seen with students is I'll point out that the answer to a question is something, and that a common mistake is that people aren't squaring numbers. And I know for a fact that a handful of students made that mistake, but they don't change it in their work. They just let it go because it's already done and over with. So I'm looking for people who are constantly making corrections and making sure that they're they're playing an active role again in the learning. Now, the way this is going to be done is at the end of each week, you're going to be given a grade in each of these categories based off of a rubric that's posted. Now, I don't think it's posted yet on Canvas, but I will have it up soon. I'll let you know when it's up, and at that point, let me know if you end up having trouble seeing it, and I'll try and post it in a slightly different way. So the classwork and homework assignments, these are worksheets and videos that I end up posting online. You usually have a few days to complete the assignment. The one thing I want to say is don't cheat. It's graded on completion. Just do what you can. It's the point is to help you prepare and practice the skills without me being there. So this is more for your benefit. The one thing I do want to point out is with these assignments, they're going to be due at the end of the physical day, so like around midnight. So I just wanted to point that out. Now, I've been saying Ed Puzzle videos. I don't know how many of you actually know what Ed Puzzle videos are, but all my lessons are going to be pre-recorded and posted onto this site called Ed Puzzle. All it is you're gonna watch the video on this website, and every now and then it'll pause the video to ask a question, and then you answer the question. That's how I kind of gauge where you are. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to create an account and join the class using this code, MECGELA. I'll end up posting it in an announcement and through Remind later on. Now, one of the problems I kept noticing last year when I did the whole Ed Puzzle thing was that people were constantly forgetting what their username was, forgetting what the password was, and I ended up in a situation where I had 70 kids, but there were 80 accounts in my class because kids were constantly double or triple making accounts. And they had slightly different names, and it ended up being confusing for everyone. So what I want to do is be consistent. Your username, I want you to use your school email. So for me, it would be jclow at wfsd.k12.ny.us. Now, if you don't want to use that one, that's fine. I can actually see what username you're using. So if you do happen to forget, you can always send me a message on Remind and I'll let you know. But again, since it's a school account and it's something related to school, you might as well just use your school email. Now, as far as the password, this one I definitely want to make sure that everyone uses just because of the fact that again it'll make it easier for me to remind you what your password is. So what I want it to be is WF for William Floyd and then your ID number. So this is not my actual ID number, but for me it would be WF 1005587. There you go. That's my password. If this ends up being a problem and you're having trouble actually getting this as a password, like they want a special character or something, let me know as soon as possible and I'll end up changing this around. But the whole idea is that the I want to make sure that the username and the passwords are consistent for people so that I can easily be able to remind everyone in case they forget. And I'm going to try to make these videos about 10 to 15 minutes, but they might end up going over, so I apologize. I'm going to try to avoid 30-minute videos. The way attendance is going to be done, you're required to attend class every day, whether it be in person or virtually. As far as the virtually attendance, the way we're going to do this is I'm going to post a do now question essentially in Canvas, and you're going to have to answer the question before the school day ends. So 2:10, you have to complete this do now question, and if you end up answering it later, then it's going to count as either a lateness or an absence. Um, yeah. I also wrote that the Ed puzzle videos are also going to be posted on Canvas. You're also expected to complete them, but those are going to be due at the end of the physical day around midnight. But the do now questions need to be done before class ends in order for you to be counted as attending. So some typical classroom policies, it pretty much goes back to what the class participation categories were hitting. Things like come to class prepared with all the materials, throw out any garbage before you leave. So, for example, if you come in with a water bottle or maybe you had a little snack, though most likely you probably aren't going to be coming in with food, but if you have anything, just throw it out. I don't like cleaning up between periods, so do me a favor and just throw it out before you leave. Making sure that you're not standing up and standing by the door before the period ends. Remain in your seat until the bell rings. Make sure you're not doing other classes' homework or playing games or being on your phone. Again, these are all things that are, if you end up breaking them, will end up demoting points from your class participation. Um, okay, so this next one with the don't complain and don't haggle really pertains to things like every now and then I like to break up how I'm teaching the class. Maybe I want to throw in a very quick Kahoot game, so that we're not just doing practice problems. And every now and then, someone ends up complaining of, oh, I don't really like Kahoot. I don't want to do that. And usually, if I keep hearing a lot of people complaining, it makes me no longer want to do it. So even if it's only one or two kids complaining, it kind of ends up bringing me down and makes me not really want to play Kahoot games anymore or do anything fun like that if I end up having people complain. I've had this situation before where I want to go outside for a lesson and people didn't want to do it. I wanted to do something else and some people didn't want to do it. So avoid complaining and also don't haggle. I do like making deals. Um, just don't try to take an inch and take a mile. So just appreciate anytime I make a deal and say, hey, if you guys do blank, I'll do blank. Try not to, keep sweetening the deal for yourself. Just, take it for what it is and be happy that I'm making deals with you. Um, the behavior thing we already talked about. Just, be nice. Don't use inappropriate language. Don't be late. All that stuff ends up um, dealing with your class participation. If you end up being absent, you need to make sure that you're making up all that work by the time you come back. You have to also make sure that you let me know if you are aware of being absent in the future, so that you can kind of get the material. Though the nice thing with this is that you can always take the virtual aspect. Any quizzes, if you're absent for them, by once you come back, you're basically expected to make them up. Extra help. So extra help is going to be run on multiple days. It's going to be run after school. I'm going to let you know what specific days after school, and they're going to be held virtually, but they're also going to be held on Wednesdays. Again, I'm going to throw out next week on Tuesday when we meet. I'll let you know a little bit more detail of when I'm going to be running these extra helps. Just make sure that when you come in for these extra help videos, that you kind of have an idea of what you want me to go over. So a lot of times some people kind of come into these extra help sessions and they just say, teach me everything. It makes it hard for me to pinpoint exactly what you're having trouble with. So try to come up with a precise thing that you're having trouble with. Some helpful tips, things like make sure that you're organized and you're doing the practice problems. Be patient. Some people get math and understand it at different rates. So you may not be used to it right off the bat. Don't stress, it'll come to you. My usual go-to analogy is that you're entering into a room that's pitch black. Some people will adjust to the darkness quicker than others. Some people, and then those people that aren't adjusting as quickly, they might be bumping into tables and falling down. You just kind of have to keep at it, and eventually you will come around to it. Make sure that you're getting involved. Again, the whole idea of this isn't passive. You have to be actively doing things, actively talking with people, and working on problems. You can't just watch me doing problems and expect to understand it. Yeah, don't always try and catch up as quickly as you can. Um, like I said, I'm here for you. I'm always going to try to help you out. Let me know. Typically, though, you want to help let me know like as early as possible. A lot of times, what people will do is they'll end up asking me for help, extensions, things like that. Pretty much like the day grades are due, and at that point, it's too late. So let me know as early as you can, and I'll try to work something with you. For example, if you have things like, I know a lot of these things aren't running anymore, but if you have work or some sort of issue going on outside that you realize you won't be able to make a certain deadline for a certain assignment, let me know at least a day before, and I'll try to work with you as far as the deadlines. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday.